You've been here for 3 years. So.
3 years.
Yeah. So, and what's your name? Sorry.
Eske.
Okay. And yeah, just tell me the story, please.
Yeah. I gotten something out of this school that no other person can get. No other school could have given me. I was very sort of, you could call it repressed when I came here. I had not been things had not been working so well socially, or academically for that reason at my old school. My old teachers were very they were very focused on what I couldn't do rather than what I could do. I remember a specific incident where one of them mentioned that I was good at maths, but it didn't really matter because I couldn't tie my shoelaces, which was weird. But then I came here and I realised a sort of acceptance to my quirks. We all have our quirks, and there's much more broad space for you to be able to sort of have these quirks here. They're much more accepted, not only by your fellow students because everyone's as weird as you are, but also by the other teachers, because they're sort of prepared to. They see it as a challenge rather than an obstacle. In the sense that they're ready to tackle this mindset and willing to sit down and understand you and then teach you things rather than just sort of go for a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
And in many ways I think that's sort of what the school embodies. I mean, it's the very principle of the school, as far as I've sort of understood it, is the whole play equals learning, and sometimes, if not always, this works better. So more or less the entire principle of the school is that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. And I don't necessarily think this concept is one-size-fits-all. I think some people aren't suited for it. But the people who are suited for it, and there are a lot of people who are suited for it, it works tremendously well. And I was one of them. And you saw once in a while a kid that came into school that clearly didn't, because we had a lot of liberties. We were allowed to do a lot of things autonomously, and we had a lot of liberty. And sometimes you'd see a kid start here and he didn't really, fit into the concept, and then a few months went and then his parents decided this was not for us and then he left again. So the only people who were really here were people with the concept worked for, and that created a very unique atmosphere. And I think that's very sort of the embodiment of the thing. The atmosphere is absolutely amazing. It's always been absolutely amazing.
Can you remember any of these, specifically these liberties that the school has, or the practical things it does during the
this room we are in right now. Some 4th or 5th grade kids, I guess. We don't really work with years that well. We use sort of classes, so I didn't keep track of who was in what year. They used to sell food in here, and they literally just decided one day, you know what, we're going to start a kiosk, and then they just got to do it. They got outfitted with a viral radio microwave and a fridge in here, and there's an oven right next door. And then they set up a table, and they just start selling food. They'd bring some from home, they'd make some themselves, they'd buy some from the stores, because the little children aren't, there's a store right down there, but the little children aren't allowed, the smaller children aren't allowed to leave the school and go there. So they mostly got their income from selling, things from the store up here for, a small extra charge, and then sell it to the kids, and were allowed to leave the school. And that's the sort of liberties you'd never get at a public school. The ability to get an idea and then just do it. And I remember so many instances where me and some friends have gotten some silly idea and we just went through with it. We just suddenly decided, no, we're going to make a movie in class, and then we asked that teacher, he was like, yeah, this is cool. And then we did it. So there's a lot of, get an idea and just run with it. And that sort of expands your idea capacities and makes you look at things at new angles. And I can feel that helping me. I'm recently in what's called a pre-IB year, which is a really strange creation, but basically what it means is that it's a preparatory year for the International Baccalaureate. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
And I can sometimes almost sense that the sort of problem handling capacities, the sort of attacking things from new angles and thinking of new solutions, is in cases better than some of the people that went to public schools, and I think that's very sort of illustrative of what I'm doing here, of what I've been doing here.
So you're able to use what you've learned here and through the process of being in the school, how to tackle things.
I feel so. Not only in educational perspectives, perhaps maybe not that often in educational perspectives, more practical It's more practical things, like, you know, we have to get something done. We don't have unlimited materials. What do we do? And then the sort of, you know, MacGyver solutions, so to speak, that are something I've definitely picked up here. The act of improvising and MacGyvering a solution.
Yeah. You've been able to learn just to completely adapt and to
adapt to situations and sort of go with the flow. And I don't think a very strict public school could have taught me that. It's a thing I picked up here from the sort of fluid nature that things go by.
What was the main thing that you thought made it work with the pupils that were here, in a sense?
I always had the idea, and that's what worked for me, because people really wanted it. It was fun. It wasn't something you were dragged through. I remember about 7th or 8th grade, I was talking to a friend that didn't go here, and he was like, "Oh, I hate school so much," and I couldn't quite understand why he said that, because I mean, the only sort of higher public school I'd known was here, and I couldn't understand why you hate school. School was fun. School was something you woke up to in the morning, then you had fun for a few hours, and you went home and you slept. So that way, I think it kept me from developing a sort of almost academical hostility. In that sense, because I wanted
it up for you.
Because I wanted to learn things. And then there's also the element of, you know, time flies when you're having fun. In that sense, so again, that sort of keeps you from developing those academical hostilities, because it doesn't seem like you're in school that long. Sometimes you are, though.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really so that playful attitude, that approach, doesn't mean you're not learning, but it means that you're enjoying what you're learning.
Yeah, exactly.
That helps you get through the learning process. So it's not such a, as you say, a wall.
Exactly. It's not something you see as an obstacle, it's rather something you see as, you know, a tool. Again, as I mentioned before, this is not a one-size-fits-all solution in any sense, and some people aren't suited for it, but the people that are, it works for tremendously well. The social atmosphere here is absolutely amazing. It is. When I walked in here originally, I got this wave of society. I met one of my old friends while I was parking my bike outside, because he's now in 9th grade. He was in 8th grade at that point. And I mean, it's just something about the air. There's something in the air here. I don't know what it is, but there's something that just makes you. Maybe it's because it's been 4 years here. I feel at home and calm.
Yeah.
But it's definitely also something to do with the people here. Otherwise, I wouldn't. So I think that's interesting to see that, you know, there's this social atmosphere that's been created because we've got all these people with the play mindset. To make it sort of brutish, the play mindset.
Yeah.
To be in one place, and that leaves you with a very sort of not necessarily silly, but very sort of playful and you know, sort of, you know, childlike atmosphere. You know, the sort of childish curiosity that you work with. When you're like, when you see, like, when you put, like, I have an 8-year-old brother, you know, I put him in front of something he doesn't know, you know, suddenly he starts investigating and fiddling with it, and I think that's the mindset that you shouldn't abandon. Playing with new things you find is not a mindset you should abandon, it's a tool that you should keep rather than fight. I think that's a common misconception. It's also interesting because if you look at, say, for example, like animals, I know it's a very, very brutish comparison to make, and it's extremely really sort of abstract and vague, but if you look at animals, if you look at lion cubs, for example, let's take lion cubs, they learn how to behave in the world and how to act in the world by doing this, by playing, if you notice. And it's not, and most animals do this, and they sort of wrestle with their siblings and play in that sense. So it seems reasonable to assume that humans also have this capacity to sort of adapt to the universe around them by playing in it, and by, you know, simulating the problems.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that the kids here who played, you know, that did the stand here, the kiosk here, or we have, I don't know if you experienced Miniby yet? Yes. Miniby, fond memories, strange memories. What was really interesting about that is that, you know, that was a long game. It was a long game of you know, playing shop basically. But I have no doubt that some of the kids who did that have, at least for 2 or 3 years in a row, certainly got some sort of thing out of it that they can use. And if you endeavoured, I have absolutely no doubt that that's the case. Maybe they ran into some of the issues that you'd experience in small scale business management. Maybe they got robbed, which is also one of the issues you might run into. And I think it's funny how these naturally teacher assisted and assisted by all the students, but still you manage to get a bunch of 10-year-olds to run an economy. I think that's pretty amazing. Naturally, I remember some of the people would cheat and they would they would photocopy money and and sort of attack the system. But then again, that's sort of what there's room for in play, and there's sort of to find new angles of approach and not necessarily caring so much for the rules. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing either, to be able to sort of think out of the box. Not just how do I earn money, but how do I actually tangibly make money in that little economy there. To sort of think out of the box and sneak up to the teacher's lounge and use the photocopier.
Yeah.
So there's
it's a classic one I think everybody thinks about doing, some of the kids do anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
It happened this year as well.
Of course it did. I wouldn't expect, I think it happened every year. I wouldn't expect anything less from the kids here.
Yeah.
So. They're thinking out of the box.
Yeah. That's what we wanted them to do.
Yeah.
Think out of the box.
I remember we had to invent stands at one point. I think I only did Mini-View once or twice. But I remember we had to do stands. And we had to make up stands. And some of the stands that were made up were absolutely ridiculous. And that's just funny, it's perfect, it's just hilarious. I think back of it and I remember I was in a stand that sold porridge. And we just sold porridge. So that was very interesting, and then no one wanted to buy the porridge, and then it all went bad, and then we were all sort of, yeah, that didn't work. But so that was a fun week though, and it was fun, and I think Mini-View is very sort of a characterization, a sort of a very where the play essence of the school comes to a very concentrated, sort of crescendo. Also the play. The actual play, the school play around Christmas is also a crescendo of playfulness. I don't know if you had students writing the script this year.
Yes.
Yeah, but it has been about that. There was that for several years at least, and some of the plays you would get out of that were absolutely silly, were so strange, but they worked. I mean, in some bizarre manner they worked. And, again, these plays were achieved by thinking out of the box. And the costumes were achieved by thinking out of the box. And, everything was student-made. There was little to no teacher participation. I mean, we had a teacher director 2 of the years. I remember being in one of the plays where we didn't have a student-written script, where we, got one from outside. And and Henrik was the director. And on the final night, me and one of my classmates had ending dialogue, meaning that there was no other cues for anyone. We could just, if we wanted to, we could just go off on a tangent and start talking for 20 minutes. And that's exactly what we did. So we made up lines on the spot and completely played with the entire concept of the play in that final scene. And it worked and people loved it. But you could see Henrik was pulling out his hair because he couldn't find what we were saying in the script. But it worked, and people liked it, and in the end he had to admit that it worked. But that was sort of, again, not necessarily a carelessness about rules, but a willingness to challenge their authority, and not authority as much as their authenticity. I mean, the ability to play without sounding too weird, and what's acceptable and what's not, and sort of finding the grey solutions. Finding the solutions that absolutely maximise inside your boundaries. There's a big difference between thinking of something and actually doing it. Naturally, we also had a very sort of I wouldn't call it strict, but a very sort of implied moral learning. That you do bad things, again, that sort of social atmosphere here doesn't really leave room for that in that sense. But there's a big difference between having the ability to find something that's breaking the rules and then actually doing it. And I think that, you know, I'm going off on a tangent that doesn't really make sense here, but you know, that's sort of, sort of the, yeah, I lost track. I don't know what I was talking about.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
But yeah, it's just thinking out of the box, basically.
That's yeah. Because you might feel hearing yourself repeating yourself, and you're, whoa, I'm losing words here.
Yeah, exactly. I get very lost for words. I mean, it was 4 years that I'll never forget, and that's hard to just put out in words. I mean, I can talk for hours upon hours of, you know, all the stuff I've experienced here, and you know, the stuff and the thing. But in the end, it can be summarized in that this school gave me an incredible personal development. It gave me a self-esteem, and it gave me a handful of social skills that I use very powerfully to this day. I'm involved in the Model United Nations at my school. I don't know if you know what that is. It is exactly what it sounds like. It is Model United Nations in the sense that, you know, you're assigned delegacy, a country, and therefore an issue as well. And then you are supposed to prepare arguments for that country's viewpoints, which makes it very fun to be North Korea. And then you have to sort of play pretend to be the United Nations and do these debates, and it's very it's very well thought through. I mean, there's a formal dress code, and you have to refer to yourself as in third person, and all these things. And again, I think that a lot of the secondary schools are integrating this into the syllabus, integrating this into the curriculum, and I think that's a big step, because that is playing. I've done 2 conferences so far. I'm going to my 3rd in April, and there's definitely, you know, the sort of air of playfulness, and that I can almost recognise from here. You know, that we're playing with this United Nations thing, and through the proxy of playing, you get a very deep understanding of the process, how it works, and how, you know, how all the voting procedures work, how the General Assembly works. I remember in one of the conferences we were at, Greenpeace were represented by students as well, as a non-governmental organisation, and they'd throw leaves at the General Assembly and bike through the building and generally just, you know, ruin things for everyone else. And they'd play around with things as much as we were, and in the end, you know, you'd always get these intricate scenarios where people were suddenly, you know, strange alliances between countries and things like that, and that's the sort of play atmosphere that I can remember from here, that I can recognise from here. And that gave me almost a feeling of nostalgia.
Okay. Alright,